Hi everybody, it's Rebecca, Virginia, and in this video I'm showing you how to do 6 rustic DIYs, all perfect for the holiday season. First up are these tall, freestanding wooden trees. Here's what you'll need to complete the DIY. This project is going to be using 3 of the wooden tree cutout signs from the Dollar Tree. So for the first tree, I'm actually going to be using 2 and stacking them on top of one another. I took the scrapbooking paper that I liked, cut it out, and then Mod Podged it down. As always, I'm using an old gift card to smooth out all of the bubbles that may have formed between the Mod Podge and the scrapbooking paper. Also, my paper wasn't tall enough to cover the entire tree, but don't worry, since I'm going to be stacking 2 trees on top of one another, it's not a big deal that there was that extra space at the top. Now I am covering my second tree in that same scrapbooking paper. And if I had any tip, it would be to use a plain paper because getting this plaid to match up was kind of a nightmare. But luckily, after 2 failed attempts, I did get it to match up, and I went ahead and lined up the plaid and then hot glued it down. I painted the back of the trees in this dark brown color, just in case you were to see it from behind. Then I took 2 wooden stars, and I don't have any paint like stain, so an easy trick is you just take some paint and then dilute it in water, and that will create a stain for you. So I covered both of these stars in a brown stain. To give my trees some height, I needed a wooden dowel. This one was actually a s'more stick that I got, which worked really well. It was thick and it held up the trees without bending or sloping down. So I went ahead and covered this in the same brown color I painted the back of the trees. There was an obvious overlap mark where I hot glued the 2 trees together, so to hide this, I just placed a piece of garland over it. I began further embellishing my tree with the wooden star, and then I started to add bows and some holly berries around the garland. To add shadowing as well as some definition to the tree, I took a dark forest green color and just dry brushed that all around the edges. With my larger tree complete, I am taking that 3rd wood cutout, and I've done pretty much the same layout, the same plaid paper and the wood star, but instead of adding the garland and the bows, I'm taking this different type of garland and just weaving it all around the tree, and I'm using binder clips to keep it in place until the hot glue dries. Once I was done decorating the trees, it was time to add the wooden dowels to the back of them. I did this by securing the wood dowel down with some hot glue. I used an old vegetable can as the base for my trees. Then I filled it with floral foam, which the wood dowel of the trees will be stuck into, and filled it with a bunch of rocks I found outside so that it would be weighted down and secure. I took some burlap fabric and wrapped that around the vegetable can and tied it off with a piece of jute. These wood trees look great together, but can also be used on their own. This glistening snow candle is the 2nd DIY in my Rustic Holiday collection. It looks great during the day, but I prefer it at night. Here's everything you need to complete this project. The first step in this DIY can get a little bit messy, so that's why I have the paper plate down. What I'm doing is taking my foam brush and brushing on some Mod Podge, then I'm sprinkling glitter all over. I did this completely around the candle holder, and I actually did it twice because I wanted a more opaque glitter look, and I let it set overnight. To add another rustic element, I hot glued jute all around the upper part of the candle. To add in some color and a floral element, I hot glued down some pine and holly berries to the front of the candle. Next, I took 2 tiny silver bells and hot glued them onto some jute. I also made a jute bow and hot glued both of those onto the front of the candle as well. To add a snowy feel, I took some white paint and painted it over the pine and the holly berries. And that completes the glistening snow candle. This magical lantern crate is my favorite in the entire Rustic Holiday collection. Here's what you'll need to complete the DIY. I started off this DIY by painting the push pins a dark brown. Then I took some burlap fabric and cut out a small piece. I wanted this burlap to say believe, but I don't have the greatest handwriting or a Cricut. So I took some of these letter stickers and just put believe onto the burlap. Next up, I took that same brown paint and painted all over the burlap as well as the letter stickers. When I peeled them off, the believe was left. I painted the wood crate that same dark brown and then used the push pins to adhere the burlap believe onto the wood crate. Then it was time to start adding some embellishments to the wood crate. I first put in floral foam, then added lots of garlands, some pine cones, cranberries, and put the lantern in itself. For the final touch, I added a bow at an angle to the side of the wood crate. I think this lantern crate is perfect to leave up all holiday long, even into the early winter. Here it is at night, glistening along with that snow candle. These corrugated star ornaments are probably the fastest DIY in this entire rustic collection. Here's what you'll need. I printed out a star on my computer and used that as a stencil when cutting out the cardboard. Then I trimmed down the stencil star a little bit right before I cut out the scrapbooking paper. To double check myself, before I cut out the scrapbooking paper, I laid down the cardboard star to ensure that the scrapbooking star was indeed smaller. Then I glued it with a simple glue stick. To keep in with that rustic theme, I added a jute tie to the top of the star and a jute bow. The final touch was adding a bit of white paint to the edges of the cardboard and the scrapbooking paper. Now your quick and easy corrugated star ornament is complete. Another illuminating DIY is this rustic vintage candle. Here's what you'll need. I'm starting off by taking this craft paper and wrapping it around my white candle. I secured it in place with a piece of tape, but you could use glue if you'd prefer. Next up, I took this scrapbooking paper and this really pretty musical print and I wrapped it around the candle as well. Then I marked off where I needed to cut. I'm cutting my scrapbooking paper 1 inch shorter than the craft paper. That way, when I roll it back up, you can still see the craft paper peeking through the top and the bottom. To embellish the candle, I'm adding a little bit of raffia and tying it around the candle. Then I added in some holly berries and a sprig of pine. To add that winter feel, I'm taking some white paint and painting it over the holly berries, the pine, the craft paper, and a bit of that scrapbooking paper as well. That's your completed rustic vintage candle. The last DIY in this rustic holiday video is this interchangeable galvanized sign. Here's what you need. The first thing you need for this DIY is an interchangeable galvanized sign. I'm going to link the video above where I did this step by step. The coolest thing about this DIY is once you have your galvanized sign, you can interchange it to fit any holiday. I'm removing the ghost that I used for Halloween and instead I'm going to be spelling out joy for the holiday season. I used a J letter ornament and now I'm taking the wreath from this ornament and that's going to be my O. Lastly, this deer head is going to be the Y. I hot glued a piece of jute so that the Y would hang perfectly from the galvanized sign. The last thing to do for this DIY is make a new bow. I took off that Halloween one, made one perfect for the holiday season, and hot glued some Velcro to it. Then it attached perfectly to the Velcro already in place at the top of the sign. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have a piece of decor that you repurpose for each new holiday or season. I hope you enjoyed all 6 of these rustic DIYs perfect for the holiday season. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.